Howdy, all. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast. Glad you're with us today. It's Wednesday, 7th of February. Wearing my love colors because it's February.
That's lovely. Lovely sweatshirt there.
Hey, we're going to talk with you today about what's happening at the border. We were just down in Eagle Pass, Texas this week. Became the center point of a lot of activity in the national news and the local news for Texas, because Governor Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, decided to install razor wire and take over a public park and some things that we're going to talk about. So that became big Texas news. Then became big national news when Greg Abbott was ordered by the federal government to take down the razor wire that he'd put up. And he's defying the order from the federal government and the order from the Supreme Court. So that became national news. Then it became national news again when a group of Christian Nationalist truckers calling themselves the Army of God were going to go down in order to protect the border, in their words, from the invasion that's happening. So our group went down to support the local voices and to add our voice to the national conversation. If Christians were going to go down to that border and tell us what's happening, we wanted to make sure we were there. And we did. And we didn't see what they were describing. Been to the border a lot of times. It's nothing like an invasion. It's talked about a lot. In my view, they're slandering our country. They're slandering the border communities. They slander Border Patrol. And they even slander the immigrants who are seeking to come into this country, spreading all kinds of false lies about it. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to give you a quick recap today about what we experienced and what we saw. And then there'll be some longer form versions of this because there was so much video, so many interactions, and so much to talk about. It's going to take us weeks to get through it all and edit it all together. So Dan and I were both there. So we're going to be your two witnesses, and we're going to show you some video of the experiences that we had there. So let's start, as always, just to make sure we tick off things. It's going to be 58 degrees and raining in Minneapolis on February 7th.
Oh, wow.
Unthinkable. Yeah, 58.
Well, it is beautiful and sunny here, so hopefully that rain stays away. But it's like 40s, and it's like a spring day here in Michigan.
Yeah, just wild. Spring's way ahead of time. And hey, Jim and Yabbits, we see you in the chat on the YouTube channel. So thanks for being here today. All right, Dan. Boy, there was a lot. Now, you and I parted paths early Monday morning after getting into Eagle Pass on late Thursday night. I guess technically early Friday morning, 2 a.m. Mm-hmm. Spent the days Friday, Saturday, and all day Sunday in Eagle Pass, and it's adjoining small community. What have you been thinking about since we parted ways a day and a half ago?
Yeah, well, what a wild ride! In all the ways. It was a long drive. We drove across the country to get there. Much like the trucker convoy, we traveled by highway, and it was a long trip. And it was, I think, really well worth it to be there in person and to be able to bear witness to what's going on at the border. We were able to see, up close what the border situation looks like. And it's not an invasion. There's a heavy military presence, but the high numbers of people flowing into the country have really crawled to almost a stop. And some people say, well, that's because the razor wire is working. Other people say, well, they can just go to other ports of entry. And we also got to speak with Eagle Pass residents who told us, the history of the area and what, migrant flow has looked like, not just in the last couple of years, but through generations. We talked to a woman who's a 9th generation farmer in Eagle Pass area. And before there was a border wall, people would just come and go because these are communities that are closely tied. And then we, put up an imaginary boundary in between them and try to separate them. But people have flowed back and forth across these lands and across the Rio Grande for generations. And it was good to hear that perspective as well. And so we got a lot of information, and we're going to try to distill it for all of you and help you understand the situation there as well.
Right. Look, immigration has been a complex issue in the United States for a very long time. There are many things that need to be solved in the legal question of how does someone enter the United States, under what conditions, and how long can they stay. Our immigration system overall is overly complex. It's arcane, and it's not serving anyone well. It needs a full and complete overhaul. Border issues are a part of immigration, but they're separate. How the border itself is managed is not strictly our immigration laws or how many visas they give out or how does someone apply for asylum. Those are the laws we have. How the border is managed is a separate set of issues. And what's often talked about is that we have a crisis at the border because there's so many people seeking to come in the country, and yet the laws that make it possible for someone to come in the country don't match the situation. And we've just lived through something because of COVID that's called Title 42. We won't get into too many details on it, but basically it was Title 42 is a federal statute that allows the federal government to suspend its immigration laws in light of a health concern in this case. So that was Title 42. So it had basically shut down all immigration coming into the country, especially for asylum seekers. That was going on for 2.5 years from the Trump administration, and the Biden administration tried to stop it, and the state of Texas sued, and it got tied up in litigation. So it extended on for another 1.5 years. So there are tens of thousands of people who would be seeking asylum in the United States and couldn't come in for the last number of years. So it's a big backlog. So there's a lot of things going on at the border. How the border is managed is a federal question. The United States border, whether that's between Texas and Mexico, Arizona and Mexico, California, Mexico, Minnesota and Canada, Michigan and Canada, New York and Canada, and anywhere. It's a federal issue, not a state issue. States don't run immigration.
Right.
The federal government does. That's another question that's at hand here. So there's a lot of mix of what's going on. What are states' obligations and states' privileges, and what are things that the federal government has to do? So it is complicated, but it's also pretty clear, right? So let's not fool ourselves into thinking that this is so complex there aren't answers to questions and there aren't solutions. There are. And what's going on currently at our border is the Texas governor has chosen to accelerate a conflict with the federal government because he disagrees with how the Biden administration is dealing with border issues. So he's taking it into his own hands as the governor, which he has no rights to do. The only way he can do it is if there's a claim of a war or an invasion. And he's tried to make this claim. The Supreme Court has denied the validity of that claim, but people still talk about it and the governor still talks about it. So over this weekend, Governor Abbott came down to this very small little town of Eagle Pass where he'd taken over a park and had a press conference there. And these faith groups, as we mentioned, came down, and we were one of those. So we're going to show you some news footage from Fox 4 News out of San Antonio. And I think they capture it pretty well about what was going on at the over the course of this weekend. And you'll hear from some local people, and we're part of this news coverage too, which is why we know it exists. All right, so I'm gonna
you let me know when you're ready. And just to clarify, the thing that Governor Abbott is doing is trying to prevent people from legally applying for asylum. He's put up this razor wire to prevent people from stepping onto U.S. soil where they then present themselves to Border Patrol and apply for asylum. So when people say, why don't they do it the right way? They're trying to do it the right way. The right way is to present yourself to U.S. Border Patrol on U.S. soil. And this is what Governor Abbott is trying to prevent.
All right, so here's that news story. I'm ready for it, Dan.
Border is attracting religious groups from out of state with competing agendas.
Both groups are converging on Eagle Pass, the city where Governor Abbott closed off a park and put in razor wire to try to stop what he describes as an invasion in Texas. Fox 4's Alex Boyer covering these developments. Alex.
Hey guys, both of these separate convoys consist of self-proclaimed Christians, but their views on how the situation is playing out at the border and what needs to be done to address it, of course, differs vastly. There is a likelihood that both groups could clash this weekend. A new political battle at the southern border is brewing. On Friday, members of the progressive Christian organization called Common Good arrived in Eagle Pass with a mission in mind.
What would Jesus do is back we come back to.
We're right behind the county courthouse, and we pulled up with our bus that says faith, hope, and love, supporting democracy for all.
Pastor Doug Pagitt is the organization's executive director. He and his supporters have traveled from Minnesota to Eagle Pass to sway faith voters from extremism, specifically calling out the self-proclaimed God's Army convoy, also making its way to the Rio Grande Valley from Virginia.
And I'll tell you that as a Christian pastor, I want to say to my other Christian friends who are a part of that convoy, slander is something we should avoid. And they are slandering these people who are seeking to come into the country, and they're slandering the people who live in these border communities.
Members of God's convoy made a stop near Austin Thursday. Former Alaska governor and vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, one of the star participants. The group held a Take Back the Border rally.
Enough is enough. We're not going to take it anymore. We're going to take our country back.
Organizers claim they do not intend on confronting people trying to illegally cross over the southern border, but frame this as a religious mission.
We're just going to be having a peaceful assembly, and ultimately it's going to be a prayer gathering.
Pastor Pagitt says he and his supporters do intend on confronting the group.
They're going to be 20 some miles away at a Christian camp where they're going to have their own meetings.
Meanwhile, Governor Greg Abbott continues to amplify the other political debate between his office and the White House. At a Republican re-election event for State Representative Stephanie Click, Governor Abbott again called the border crisis an invasion, the term he uses to defend the state's use of barriers and restricted access between ports of entry. He called it the #1 issue in America right now.
And sending a message to the entire globe that the door is open on the open borders of America, and for people from more than 150 countries have poured into our state. All-time record numbers, more than 8 million under the Biden administration.
And Eagle Pass residents who were at today's press conference say that they will be outside of Shelby Park all day tomorrow, and they invite anybody who wants to come talk to them about what they say are the real issues facing them in that border community.
House calendar number 60, House Resolution 863.
Stop sharing
Resolution impeaching Alejandro Nicholas Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, for high crimes and misdemeanors.
Sorry about that, everybody. All right, so that's just one of the many news stories. On our website, you'll be able to find many of the other news stories about what's going on. But I think that captures it pretty well. What's going on? The local organizers there, as the reporter mentioned, we had events happening right there in near Shelby Park. And I know this can be really complicated for people that haven't been there and seen these places. If I can just paint the picture for you. Eagle Pass is a small community, a small border town. Border towns are wonderful places. I just ran to somebody this morning and said, hey, I was down at the border. And he said, oh, how is it? Is it really wild? And I said, no, it's not wild at all. Like it is.
And none of the border towns we've been to over the years have been wild. They've all been beautiful little towns, safe. Every resident will say, it's safe here. Come visit. It's not what they say on the news.
It's true. It's true in all of these places. Everywhere you go. Now, are there issues about thousands of people seeking immigration into the United States in these small border towns? Absolutely. It's a big issue. Something you have to talk about when you talk about this is the fact that migrants are not themselves, each individual person or family, making a decision about where they want to go. We wish that was the case, but it's not. The truth of the matter is that cartels in Mexico determine what ports people will cross at. It's heartbreaking to know this, but if you're coming from Venezuela or Central America or Honduras is in Central America, or from Haiti, coming from any of these places, you're going to run into the cartels, and they will tell you where you can cross. And they have their own system for doing this. That when they talk about human trafficking, this is what they're talking about. The cartels control this. So a few weeks ago, there were a lot of people crossing at Eagle Pass. Now they're crossing over in Yuma, Arizona. So they're moving these groups around as to where they're going to pass. Border Patrol has told us, people who work on the border have told us, that it's our policies in the United States that make it so difficult for people to seek immigration into the United States that empowers the cartels. If we want the cartels to not be in control of this, then we should make immigration more possible and more clear for more people. And that's the way you disempower the cartels. Right now, our policies, both in immigration law and in border practices, are empowering the cartels. There is no question about this. Everyone agrees who knows anything about what's going on at the border, that's how it's going. So and you're going to hear from lots of people about things they say. There's a lot of conversation about human trafficking, sex trafficking of children, and drugs coming in the country. Our current system is empowering people who want to do that kind of behavior, the drug cartels that are doing that kind of behavior. So if we want to change it, that's how we're going to change it. And that's going to be the requirement to do so. In the meantime, because there is no current plan to fix immigration law, even this bill that's now falling apart, that was just negotiated by the Senate, that the House now has said that they're not going to take. You see, I get a little thumbs up on the screen there. I don't know why the little thumbs up just popped up.
Yeah, that's fun.
The
bipartisan immigration bill, dead on arrival, according to the Speaker of the House, because Trump doesn't like it.
And even if that bill did pass, it doesn't solve these problems. It doesn't say, let's address how many migrants can come in. There's quota systems. There's a quota system that says only a certain percentage of any migrants can come from any particular country, which makes no sense because people from 150 countries don't want to come here in equal numbers. But we have a system that right now has made it so that if you are from Mexico or Guatemala or Honduras or somewhere, and you're seeking a work visa to work in the United States, it's a 25-year waiting list. Okay, that doesn't work. It's not possible. The numbers we're allowing in for legal work immigration is teeny. And many of those people then can't go back to Mexico. They're afraid if they go back that the laws are going to change. So we have a sliver of a door open for a teeny number of people to come in, and then they feel like they can't go back. There's a lot of solutions to this. We'll talk about other solutions down the road about what can go on. But in our interactions here, here's where I think it would be important for people to know what's happening. This Trump-supporting brigade of Christian nationalists were riled up by internet radio hosts, by InfoWars, by Steve Bannon, by Michael Flynn, by all these groups that were telling them that there's an invasion at the United States border, and if you're a good patriot, you need to go down and protect the United States from a criminal invasion. Then they got there and they're like, oh yeah, okay, there's no invasion. And then they think the razor wire that covers about a mile of length was the reason. Like an invasion was turned back by razor wire. So it's madness to think that that's the solution, or that was the response. They came down and found out that, okay, there's not an invasion as they had thought about it, but they still have these talking points. And we're going to get into some of that in the interviews that we did with people. But even more importantly than the specifics of the topic, I want to talk about why it's important to engage. And look, our primary work at Vote Common Good is we want to engage. We want to confront topics and we want to confront ideas that we think are harmful because we believe that's our back. We take the posture of let's engage with people to see if we can be changed and if they can be changed. Because the only way we're going to move forward is if that which has become divided in this nation could find some way to come together. Now, look, we're not Pollyanna about this. We don't think just go and have a smiley, friendly conversation with people is going to solve the problem. But it's going to be part of the solution for sure. We're going to have to talk to people because, Dan, as you and I talked about driving, we're not only talking about strangers that we're meeting down at the border who differ with us on border practices and our way forward. We're talking about our own family members, people that we actually love and care about. And we have to figure out how to talk about these issues. So we're going to show you some interactions here today about the kinds of things that can happen when you choose to engage, and when you get over the hump of the initial response of people not trusting each other. And so these kinds of conflicts, as the news story said, set up this one side versus the other. And we do everything we can to try to make one side versus the other to be two groups of people who are talking about the same issues. And it's really hard to do sometimes because there's an awful lot of time where people want to talk about just heroes, villains, and victims. And I know it's easy for people to live in a world where there's just heroes, and you're likely on the hero side, where there's villains, and that's likely people who disagree with you, and then some people who are being harmed by the fact that the villains are doing what they're doing. And we can go through our lives very easily just deciding heroes, villains, and victims over and over. It doesn't capture the reality of any situation, however. And we're much better thinking about human beings on a shared journey forward in our lives, and how can we live with one another when we have differences, when some of us do wrong and some of us do right, and people are harmed and people are helped by those things. But none of us are always in the right, and none of us are always in the wrong. So I'm not trying to say good people on both sides-ism and that kind of thing. That's not what this is about. This is about reframing any engagement that we have, saying to people, we are in this thing together. We are journeying together with difference. And sometimes what you're doing is more harmful than good. And sometimes I'm missing information, and sometimes you're missing knowledge, but we have to find a way forward, because that's actually what we're experiencing, is a shared planet, a shared life, sometimes shared family, sometimes shared children and grandchildren. And we have to find a way to converse with one another and to find a way forward. So that's what we're going to try to show you a couple of examples of.
Yeah. So we're going to start out with, to set the scene, we rolled into town. We found out where the God's Army truck convoy was headed, and we decided to head there to engage. And this is, again, an example of what we were just talking about. People, when they saw our bus and saw the phrase confronting Christian nationalism, got immediately upset with us. And got a little aggressive. They wouldn't let us in. But by the end of the night, we were having great conversations with these very same people. So it is possible, and we'll show you that right now.
In addition to National Guard troops, a convoy of civilian protesters has been making its way to the southern border. A series of rallies expected to happen on Saturday. Now, this group refers to itself as God's Army.
Convoy have called themselves God's Army and are calling on active and retired.
God's Army is headed straight to the border to protest.
They're demanding more action to stop migrants from entering the U.S.
We're Christian pastors.
We're not here for confrontations of any kind.
No, we're Christian pastors. Oh, are you Christian nationalists? Are you Christian nationalists? No, I'm just asking if you're Christian nationalists, because we're only confronting Christian nationalists. So you're not one, though?
No.
So we're not confronting you?
It doesn't matter. This kind of thing, when we look it up, we don't want to see it. This is the stuff that gets us negative press and makes us all look like Yahoo. No thank you.
Oh, really? Hi there. Christian pastors tell us we can't come in. What do you think that's about? Thanks. We'll be right back.
You're not wanted here.
Thank you very much.
If you're truly coming to this country to enrich this country, not use the country, I'm all for you coming.
Yeah, me too.
Right? All for it, right? But it's not what happens, right? It's not what happens. Everybody that comes across the border is not coming to seek asylum. They're coming to take advantage of this country.
Why do you know that? What's been your experience that tells you that's true?
But I see a lot of people, is what I'm getting at.
Okay. Beat up in New York City by illegal immigrants. It's funny
can,
getting away with it. What about
oh,
that?
hang on, I want to talk to you in a second. Let us finish this one. Yeah, be nice now.
Yeah, let us speak. Let us
super
speak.
nice. We can go tell them I'm nice.
Yeah, see, that's again, that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
He will not see the kingdom of God. That's what Jesus said.
Quick question, because I think it was you, but I heard a lot of different voices. I think the message I was hearing there was, In order for America to be great, people need to repent to Christ.
That's right.
So a Christian nation is the only way this nation can be great.
That's right. Every other nation in the world that's ever existed that existed apart from God has collapsed and fallen into the dustbin of history.
And so unless this is a Christian nation,
we're going down the tubes.
We're going down the tubes.
That's right.
When we say, groups like ours say Christian nationalism, we mean that.
That's right. We don't mean like Nazism or something like that. So you have to be a Christian or you're going to prison or whatever, or put you in a camp. We don't mean that.
So you're a Christian nationalist?
Well, I guess you could say that, yeah.
They're going to be removed from the property because while they are on public grounds, we have a permit for 3,000 feet that direction, 3,000 feet that direction. We're going to trespass them and get them out of here. That's not the kind of people we want around here either. They can go. That's the kind of rhetoric we don't want. I have gay friends that are good people. I have Muslims that are good people that are my friends. And they're not going to sit around here with that kind of
Do you have any non-authorized people in the country that are good friends?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fair enough.
Most of them have been here a very, very long time.
Fair enough.
And you know.
So you're just old school. You're just old school non-legals. You're not new gen non-legals.
Not at all. Actually, I believe that most of the illegals that are coming across the border are trying to find sanctuary. It's the illegal criminals that are accompanying them, and then they leave them and abandon them.
Yeah, for sure.
And then this ranch has to take care of them.
Yeah, for sure.
And those are the people that I believe need help, not the ones, the males that are coming across. So it's hard to say allow it, don't allow it. It's a very tricky situation.
Yeah, we should figure it out, shouldn't we? Appreciate you, Mike.
As soon as they came up, I wanted to find you to go, that's them.
That's your confronting.
Then I understood.
So just so you know.
100%.
That's real?
I was reacting on security basis.
I totally get it. Okay. I'm not blaming you for anything. I'm not even telling you to change your mind. I just want you to know that's the thing we're talking about.
Yeah, we don't like that either. They stand out in front of Comic-Con yelling at people all the time. It's ridiculous. And my wife works for Comic-Con. And I go to these events and these guys are standing there. They're literally trying to get somebody to hit them so they sue them.
I know.
It's a nightmare.
So just so you know, we're not agitators. We're trying to stop that. I'm a Christian pastor trying to stop that nonsense.
That is nonsense.
That's what we're
hateful.
doing.
God's love is eternal. It doesn't end and stop with every single little word in the Bible that might put hatred on homosexuals or Muslims or good.
Mike, be careful. You're going to get on this bus with us and you're going to come with us to Arizona tomorrow.
You can't get me on there. Watch out, buddy. My thing also comes with militia activity, and I'm not sure you want to be involved in that.
I don't want the militia anywhere around me. But, Mike, thank you, buddy.
Everybody get out the road. Everybody out of the road,
All right. I had not had a chance to see that yet, Dan. That leaves a smirk on my face. Yes, so much going on there that I'm sure for people who didn't know all the context, there's some nuances in there that would really liven this up for them. That person, Mike, that we were talking to there that said, I have friends like this, that was the same security guard that came up screaming at us and telling us to get out of here. You heard the voice of a woman yelling, we don't want you here. By Sunday afternoon, we were at the same restaurant and chatting it up with her. And she said, I really like what you guys are up to. Really appreciate it. So this is the thing, right? That the initial response for so many people is that that you're the problem, right? Either that they see us as a problem or people that might agree with us see them as the problem. And so often people think this. There's no reason to even engage.
Right.
It doesn't. I don't know, Dan, what was your experience over the course of our days there? This argument of it's worth it or not worth it to even try to engage.
Yeah, I think there's more common ground than folks would initially think. Even with groups like ours, we rolled in with a bus that said confronting Christian nationalism, and that put people on the defensive for some reason, even though they would say they're not Christian nationalists, except for the one guy who was like, "Yeah, I guess I am a Christian nationalist." But I think people get so stuck in their two sides-ism that they don't realize that there's middle ground, even if you disagree on some major things like what to do with the border. Like with Mike, we agreed that, hey, things should work better than this. We should figure this out together. And you get past the sound bites and the talking points, and you realize that these are people that care about their community. They really think that they're doing something good by showing up here and defending what they see as their country or their whatever. And they do view themselves as the heroes of this story. And I think if you can just poke that balloon with a pin and help them realize that we're not out here to to try to villainize them, but we're here to humanize both sides of this, find some common ground, and not end up on different sides of the issue at the end of the day, but be able to have a conversation that isn't just regurgitating sound bites that we heard on the news.
When I'm in these situations and I look at someone like Mike, who we interacted with a lot that day, or another Mike that we're going to show you a video here, an interaction in a moment, or many of the other people that we talk to, I like to think, if I only heard the things that they choose to hear, or if I only had the friends that they have, or took in the information they take in, a little caveat here, people have the choice to hear many things more than what they hear, right? All of us could be listening to other ideas, other voices, other authorities. But if I only heard what they hear, would I think more the way I think, or would I think more the way they think? That's a fundamental question for engagement, right? Is the person reasonable at all? Or is the person simply personal walls up or shutting you out and telling you can't listen? Okay, there's no chance for engagement there. But if you can get around that, or if that doesn't exist, and you say to someone like, well, what do you know? What's been your experience that leads you to the conclusions that you hold? And some of you know our work. It asks the questions, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? And what does that belief do for you? And I'm a firm believer that the third question, what does your belief do for you, is the most powerful part of all of this. It's the thing that really is operative for most people. And many of these people see their political side telling them a certain thing about migration. Because a lot of the people I've talked to, even down there, I said, 10 years ago, did you think this? And they said, no, I didn't, but things weren't as bad as they were then. I think the difference is Donald Trump came on the scene and said those people coming in our country are terrorists and are rapists and are bad people. And if you're going to be a part of my movement, you have to think of them that way. That's what I truly believe has gone on. So a whole lot of people who didn't used to think that they needed to be afraid of people coming in this country have become afraid of people coming in this country because they've been told by their political leader that that's the opinion they have to hold. Now, that's a bias that I come with. And anytime I can engage with someone, I think, what if that's when I engage people on this topic, what if that way of thinking is a very fragile understanding and they actually don't want to think about the world that way? What if they want to be let free from the things that they're actually thinking? And that's what happened with Mike, or the two guys sitting on the back of that truck. Like, it was a real engagement that we had over a number of hours, like keep coming back. And I'd even forgotten, Dan, that we were out there in the rain when I saw the video out there all wet, like just on the side of the road waiting for the rest of the convoy to show up. And we're interacting with these people who are there to support it. And and we're part of it. It's amazing.
And one of the more interesting things that happened, you might have caught a little bit of this in the video, is in addition to us showing up, there was this extreme right group of protesters that came with just horrible racist signs, homophobic signs, chanting with bullhorns, and against the convoy. And so it almost took someone even more extreme to let them soften their hearts to us, I guess. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Because Mike, like you heard say, like, we don't like that for sure, and we're like, well, we don't like that, like that, like that's no one here wants that, and so that was a little bit of a common ground we found with them.
Yeah, and we didn't show it in the video here, but another conversation I had with Mike, I said, hey, the people that are coming in the convoy that'll be here, it turned out to be about 250 people as a part of this whole thing. By the way, nothing like what the organizers had suggested. 40,000 trucks. I think we saw was 4 big diesel trucks and a bunch of RVs and some cars. So a couple hundred
mostly
people.
Cars, a handful of trucks. Yeah.
And I said, Jim, how many of the people you think that are going to come to this in this convoy thing are closer to the way those street preachers are versus closer to where you are? He's like, oh, I'm sure there's none of those people that are like these guys. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who are like those guys. Like that's the difference. And he didn't want to let them in as a part of that group, but they were clearly going to let them in once they swung the gates open.
And we met a lot of people with that extreme view once we were down in Eagle Pass, in front of the border gates. And we'll show a little video here in a moment. But these are people that came because the convoy was coming. They came because they were, quote, called to come here to defend the border. And, along with good-hearted folks that we met at outside the rally, there were some very extreme people that came with the convoy, including armed militia. And the police even told us there was KKK, there was armed militia, and in fact, we had a hot dog cookout scheduled with local pastors. Police told us we could not hold that event because they could not guarantee our safety from the militias and the KKK.
And that is a crucial fact of what was going on that weekend. When the people in this town were scared, the police said, look, we've never had this level of threat in Eagle Pass. Now, these are the police who work in the town with Border Patrol, where the town has never been threatened by migration, but it is threatened by these people that came down to agitate. Specifically, the InfoWars people. Someone was taken into custody. They had weapons out, and it put a real fear into that town. Now, not everybody thought they were coming as a militia, but the programming of this convoy was all about it being a militia. That's what it said they were going to do. They were going to confront the immigration coming in at the border as God's army. And within days of the public release of all this information, they were trying to backpedal. What it ultimately ended up being was a charismatic prayer service, rallying people around general cause of Christian spirituality being the best thing for America. Which, by the way, like there's a continuum of Christian nationalism. There's people who think, hey, if people were more spiritual, we'd be more kind, we'd be better. Let's, make spirituality more common in America. There's some people that are like, look, religion is the problem. Let's keep it out of America. There's those debates. There are people like the guy we talked to who said the only way America will be great is if we all convert to Christianity, but we don't actually want to put you in prison. But there's other people who say we actually do want to lock up people who commit crimes against the laws of God. Like there's a lot of versions of all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we should always be careful not to attribute to anyone beliefs that they don't want to attribute to themselves. People you might disagree with, they probably believe plenty of things for you to interact with. You don't have to attribute something else to them. There's often plenty there. But I do want to encourage us to say, let's not think about people who oppose our ideas, even if their ideas are harmful, as simply the enemies. In the Christian tradition, the Jesus story is told where he has 12 chosen disciples that after his death take on the moniker of apostles. 11 of the 12 do, because one of them committed suicide. because he was a betrayer of Jesus. So in the story of Jesus, you have 12 chosen disciples. One is a betrayer who commits suicide. One is a denier in Peter, who says, I didn't even know the guy. And one of them is a doubter named Thomas. So what I think the Christian tradition wants to tell from its very beginning of the Gospels is the group of people close to Jesus are all kinds of people. Betrayers, deniers, doubters, all kinds. So let's not think that what we need to do is clean and purify the group who's around our Jesus following. Because if we do that, then we're not actually doing what Jesus was doing, right? You have Peter who pulls out a sword and swings it at a guard in the gospel tales and chops off a man's ear. Violent level of combat. And Jesus is like, put the sword away. But he doesn't sort them ahead of time, right? So look, our Christian tradition is more complicated, involves more people than we want to include. And if you're someone, holds views like I hold, everyone's in the love of God. And we're not talking about outsiders and insiders. We're talking about all of us. So that's the situation we find ourselves in. And there are a lot of people who want to divide. This particular passage that I hadn't ever used before around this topic, but really struck me at this when we were down in Eagle Pass, is that saying of Jesus, what God has brought together may no one ever separate. Like that's often said at weddings, but it's not really a wedding statement at all. It's this thing that doesn't want someone to take that which shouldn't be divided and try to divide it. Well, our country is that way. Our border is that way. Humanity is that way. And when people's primary purpose is to divide, to put up boundaries, to put up razor wire, I think the Christian teaching and what Jesus is up to is connect those pieces back together, put it back together, and don't play into the separation game. I know politically that's what you want to do. And look, I know on election day in November, people are going to have a choice, vote for this one or that one. And I want to say to everybody of good conscience and good faith, do not vote for Donald Trump. Please just don't do it. If you're looking for advice, take this advice. Don't vote for him. But I don't think that's about dividing us. You can differ on who you vote for without feeling divided. It's not the only way to think about it. All right, Dan, do you have more to say before we roll this video of this next one of Mike, the other Mike?
Yeah, just a whole bunch of mics down there. And I think we ran into some mics that we weren't going to convince of even the other side's humanity. But I think the dialogue is still beneficial for the onlookers. And so there's people in this crowd that you'll see that I think saw a different way of engaging, and people in the videos we post after all this, hopefully we'll see a different way of engaging, even with someone who really doesn't like what you're up to, as you'll see in this next video.
Dan and I described that we were, when Governor Abbott was having his press conference surrounded by Border Patrol, because the police had cordoned off that area 2 blocks away. We were up at the top of Main Street in this great little town of Eagle Pass. And there were a bunch of pro-Convoy and pro-Trump supporters there on one side, and then people from the town on the other. Now, the trucker Convoy side didn't have anyone from the town standing with them. There were people from the town who supported the trucker Convoy. There are people who support Greg Abbott who live in Eagle Pass. For sure there are. Not the majority in my experience, not anywhere close to it. But all the people who were standing together on the one side of the road and the Convoy supporting with Trump flags and all, those were not people from the town. Then the other side was mostly people from the town and us and a couple of others, people that had come from Laredo and other border towns. And so there was this back and forth across the street. And so there was chanting and yelling and that kind of thing, going on. And we were making our way, Dan and I, back and forth across the street sometimes. But we were very clearly identifying ourselves with the townspeople and with those who were wanting immigration procedures to be different. So this is a video that I made when I just had my phone and microphone and walked across the street and started to engage some people because, there were actually 2 things happening. One of those was that these people were yelling over the top of people from the town side who were trying to make important statements, and they were being disruptive by chanting. So when they would do that, I would cross the street and start to talk to them because then it would stop them from shouting. right? It was sort of an old trick of how you quiet a crowd in a protest such a situation. But then I got into these conversations, and this one's a little long, but I think it's worth it, because what you're going to see is a whole bit of conversation with me and a person named Mike, where Mike believes things are happening at the border, and he has seen many things. And he says this, he describes what he's seen. And he says, and this is why they're doing the things that I've seen them do on videos. And I try to suggest, could there be an other way to do it? And over the course of this time, I guess you'll kind of see what happens. And the start of the video, when I go over, I interact with one guy who's yelling at the start of this, and it starts pretty abruptly. So let's give you a little context. He is saying, here's why those people across the street, pointing at the townspeople, they always want to say they don't know what Trump supporters believe. And it's because and what I think he's trying to say is because they're over there and they're not asking us and they're not listening to us, because, they're on that other side. So I walk up to him and say, hey, what are you saying? And then his response is telling me to go, expletive myself. So I hope this doesn't get us blue on the on video.
Yeah, if you have kids in the room, earmuffs, kids, for this next segment.
Yeah. By the way, we're sworn at a lot by Trump supporting people and even Christian Trump supporting people. All right, so here we go. So this first guy I walk up to, you'll hear him say that, and then off we go. So here we go.
MSBC, they're always asking why they can't talk to Trump supporters. Well, the reason is why, because they don't know anything. Fuck Trump.
You might tell me what you're saying?
What?
No.
Who the fuck are you?
Well, that's what I've been asking myself every morning when I wake up.
Well, no, I mean, who are you?
Oh,
Are you with them? Well, then get out of here.
Oh, you don't want to talk with us?
Okay.
No, because you don't know. Just go.
Okay.
You can
Okay.
they're reading their script.
So he's not our
Just
guy.
want to see if you'd be willing to share with me what you're thinking.
Hey, don't talk.
I'm with those guys, man.
Are you? Yeah, I'd like to know what you're thinking.
Yeah, we'd love to. Love to chat. My name's Doug.
I heard these people.
This guy, get him the fuck out
How
of here.
come?
I heard him say.
How come?
That's all right.
If you're with them, you get the fuck out of here.
Why is that?
Because you're a dick.
That's all right. Let him talk to us. That's all right.
Yeah. Hey, my name's Doug.
I heard him say that they don't love America. Earlier, when they were standing down here on the corner, they were screaming, "Oh, they don't love America."
Oh, they were saying that they don't love
America. They hate America, basically.
There may have been a misunderstanding.
When you
and
say
I
it's
know
our
those people-
border, what do you mean by our border?
They live
our
here.
border.
They live here is what they
I've spent the last 3 days talking to residents, lifelong residents here, that say there is a crisis at the border.
Sure. Okay.
So
So
you're
they're going
allowed.
to disagree with that.
I
Fair enough,
disagree
right?
with it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
But so do the residents here disagree with the residents here.
Some of them, yeah.
No, not some of them. Everyone we spoke to for the last 3
Well, you
days.
didn't speak to them, so obviously.
How do
to
we
speak
know
to-
they're residents?
Human trafficking.
Well,
Why are they covering their face if they're residents that want to be heard?
I can promise
Why do they
you-
have to put masks on their face?
I can promise you that they're residents. I mean, I've been here with them. They're real residents.
So you don't think the fact that they're saying people are drowning in the river rather than walk across the bridge is a problem? Why are they coming across the river and climbing barbed wire when there's two bridges you can safely walk across?
Why do you think
Is
they
that
are?
because they're coming in illegally?
Yeah, tell me, why do you think it is?
I think it is because they don't want to say who they are, and they're not supposed to be coming in here.
Would you be open?
Because they were sent here.
Would you be open to another reason?
Voice your opinion. We're in America. Aren't we supposed to?
Yeah, for
We're
sure.
supposed to throw opinions back and forth, right?
That's what I'm saying, my man. That's what I'm saying.
I don't agree with you, and I fist bump you because I agree with that statement.
Yeah.
But I don't agree with it because I think we're buddy-buddy, and I agree with what you're saying. I think you're extremely wrong about that.
You don't even know what I'm saying yet, but you can start.
No.
with
I'm just talking about what they're saying. Now let's me and you have our own little personal. I'm Mike.
Mike, you have great
What's your
teeth.
name?
Doug. Mike, you have great teeth.
They're fake. They're bought and paid for. Let's
Okay.
have our own little Mike Doug debate here. Tell me what you're thinking, Doug.
Here's what I know, and I've spent a lot of time on that side of the border and a lot of time on this side of the border. So here's what I know, and I've talked to a lot of people trying to come in the country.
Right.
There are asylum seekers who are seeking asylum in the United States. The border crossing is not available to them because the governor of Texas has chosen to not let them come. It's their legal right in the United States. So let me finish.
No, go ahead. I'm just taking the questions I want to respond with. Go ahead.
It's their legal,
I am listening.
It's their legal right to seek asylum, but they can only do it on U.S. soil. Those are the laws. So if they can get on U.S. soil, they can seek asylum. But the governor won't let them cross at the crossing point. Okay, they closed it. So if these people cross the river and say to a border patrol, take me into custody. I'm seeking asylum. They're doing everything they can to follow the law.
Well, let me respond before you get too far ahead.
That's it. Go ahead.
But you're saying they closed the crossing point, but I spent the last 3 days watching people go back and forth all day long.
But are they,
we stood here.
Were they asylum seekers?
Why constitute an asylum seeker?
When you
haven't that same border crossings always been here? Haven't people been seeking asylum here as long as this country has existed?
Well, yes.
So you're telling me that only since Abbott came into office have they not allowed? Is that what you're telling me?
That's what I'm telling you.
You're saying Abbott came in office and said, no, we're not letting anybody else in our country.
No, what they're doing is...
What would that be based on? And an asylum seeker still has to abide by our Constitution.
Of course.
So they don't have a legal right. We have the legal right to protect our border. They want to come over here and become an American the proper way. They then have a legal right to say something about our border. But I don't have a legal right to go into Mexico any more than they have a legal right to walk into my country.
Just try this on. Just do a thought.
Go ahead. I could still hear you.
I want to record this.
They need to speak.
By the way, can I share this with other people if you're
Help
comfortable
yourself.
with what we say? Okay.
I should be doing the same, as a matter of fact. Oh, man.
That's okay.
I don't have an official media site, but, let's do I aim at you, you aim at me. We're not going to fight about anything.
No.
Trust me, if you decided you wanted to, I'm just going to turn and walk away. I'm not here to argue.
Have I given you any impression that I'm trying
to
argue?
No. So I'm telling you,
Okay.
you know that I'm not going to.
Yeah. That guy over there.
Emotional, and we're feeling. That's why we all.
I want to ask you about all that too. Okay,
all right,
so would you be open to another suggestion here about what's going on?
Sure, but what we said so far, just for whatever my video is going to be worth, is you're saying they have a legal right to come on across as an asylum seeker. I'm saying there is no preset legal right on their behalf. They have to come here. They have to prove they need to be here. And then we have to say, we understand, okay, come on across. But as I have been told, and as we have seen through video for the last 3 years, all they got to do is come up, and they've caught child rapists, they've caught human traffickers. Yes, they have, because we've seen the evidence. I understand that you can say no, but I'm telling you the evidence we've seen over years. Not I heard a couple of stories. We've looked into it.
When we're done,
all these people had to do.
I'd love to
all these people had to do was walk up and say, "I'm afraid, and I'm going to let you in."
Mike,
they do not have a preset legal right. They're not Americans yet.
Let me ask you this fundamental question.
Go for it.
Why do you think those people are crossing in a place where Border Patrol is waiting for them?
Because they're being sent to that place.
Why are they turning themselves into
Why do they have these big camps that they go through?
Okay.
They're being turned away.
I would love
because there's a way to come in this country, and that is not the way.
Hang on.
Well, you asked why do I think? That's why I think.
But let me finish the question.
Okay, go.
Why do you think if they're trying to get in the country illegally, why are they crossing at a place where Border Patrol is waiting for them and they're putting themselves right into the hands of Border Patrol? Why are they doing that? Just if they're...
No, there's some Border Patrol here, but with the budget cuts is nowhere near enough.
No, the videos...
And this isn't the only spot. This is just one of them.
I'm at the videos you've seen of people coming across the Eagle Pass. They're doing it right into the hands of Border Patrol, right? Right?
Yeah,
why are they doing that?
I understand, but I can finish and talk about that. We have seen patriots like Michael Yon interviewing on sources like Band.video and InfoWars, where he has spent years in the jungle. They've documented these sites where they come to. We've seen the sizes of these camps increase. They direct them on to where they're going.
Yeah.
They actually come to the border going, I'm going to Massachusetts.
Look,
I'm going to California.
Yeah.
If they're an asylum seeker in danger, how do they even know the name of the states? All they should know is, please, America, take me, I'm in danger.
Okay.
How do they know and how do they already have telephones?
Mike, I wish that were
How do they have shirt? And I know it's true because we've been watching the videos for years.
Mike, listen, I wish it were true what you're saying to me.
It is true. We've been watching the video for years.
Let me finish my statement. I wish it was true what you're saying to me, that all they have to do is say, let me in. But
no, they have to say, I'm afraid.
Mike, let me
But
finish.
I want to make sure you're quoting me
Mike,
properly.
let me finish.
They have to say, I'm afraid.
I know, but let me finish. If all they have to say is, let me in because I'm seeking asylum, because I have a credible claim, if that's what they're saying, I wish it was true that that's all they had to say. But here's the truth. And Mike, I worked with asylum seekers.
Okay.
That is not all they can that they're required to say.
Okay.
They also have to say, where would you go who will take you in.
Right.
They have to give that information, Mike. So the reason they know they're going to Massachusetts, the reason they have a name is because those are the rules.
Okay.
Those are
Now,
the laws, Mike.
My turn to respond. It brings a couple questions up for me.
Okay.
Who are they? Where are they coming from exactly?
Here's what they have to also prove.
Where are they coming from?
Listen, Mike, when they come to seek asylum, here's what they have to say.
Who? From where?
Let me finish. They have to say, this is where I'm from. Here's my documentation.
Yeah,
Long pause.
That microphone is probably sounding really loud.
This probably sounds really loud. Here's my documentation of my credible claim seeking asylum, where I'm going, whose hands.
But what documentation?
Please, Mike,
clarify.
Mike, just let me finish.
But what would the documentation be?
Mike, let me go through all of it, and we can ask a question. Here's what they have to say. Where I'm going, I'm seeking asylum as a credible need. Where am I going? Whose custody will I be in? And where am I from? And these are my legal documents from my country of origin. All of that, Mike, is what they have to have. If they don't have it, when Border Patrol sees them when they cross, whether it's at the checkpoint when it's open or at the river when it's closed, they will turn them around. So these people, you can come with me, Mike. You come with me sometime. We'll go over there.
Yeah, I
would love to do. I know we just met.
We'll talk about that when we turn each other off. I'm going to be around for a couple more days.
But I would love to do that with you.
So would I. I would really love. Honestly, I want to see all perspectives.
I hear you.
I'm not here to argue. I'm just here to. And I'm glad that I bumped into you.
I draw.
All right. So I just think that interaction with Mike is so indicative. Right. I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot of sound. If you got headphones on, you're listening on your phone or your computer. A lot of sound. But think about this from Mike's perspective for a minute. For years, he's been watching videos of some journalist going into the camps in Mexico where asylum seekers are. And they're like, why are these people all in camps? He doesn't recognize, we talk about it later. I'll post the whole video. You can watch the whole thing. He doesn't know that they're being sorted by the cartels. He didn't know that. And he didn't know that to come to the U.S. border and seek asylum, that there's a procedure that you have to have in place to do it. You have to be able to say to people, here's where I'm going. I've been the name that some migrants have put down, some asylum seekers have put down on their application to say, I will go to Minnesota and Doug Pagitt will be my sponsor. That is something they have to have. Mike didn't know that. Mike didn't know what else could be going on the other side. So he had one story in his head that people had filled with a whole lot of, here's why they're doing this. Because there's some shadowy organization in the background. We go on in the conversation and I'm saying, like, there's groups that help people coordinate this. And he's like, well, what kinds of groups? And I'm like, well, they're refugee aid groups, like nonprofits. And he's like, well, how do we know those people aren't in with terrorist groups and all this, right? Like Lutheran Social Services or other groups like that. So from Mike's perspective, he just didn't, all the video that he's seen has had an explainer come with it. And the explainer was, this is how they're smuggling in terrorists and child pedophiles.
Mm-hmm.
Not, this is what's required for asylum seekers to come in the country. But you kind of had three people we interacted with, right? The one guy that's like, hey, they don't listen to Trump supporters. And he says, get out of here. And you're with them. You're not with us. Just get out of here. And then Mike that's like, hey, I want to listen. And the other guy that's like, well, I kind of want to hear what you have to say. And then he just sort of wandered off. And it's sort of like three groups of people that I think are pretty representative of what we run into. I don't know that they proportion out as 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. But there are people who, like Mike, who just really are hungry for the data and the information. And, a stranger walking up to him and talking to him on the street is not the greatest credible source, right? Like, no reason he should believe me. I wouldn't believe me if I disagreed with the things I was hearing. But Mike was open to it and really did. When we got done, he's like, I really do want to go over to the other side. And I want to go into those refugee camps and find out if I've been wrong about all this all along. So I just want to encourage us that some people are really open to knowing and learning and understanding. And it's hard to know who and when and in what situation. If things had gotten more hostile, Mike might not have been open to listening to anything about anything. If people started, I don't know, yelling louder or throwing things at each other or something, if it become hostile, which it didn't, that could also change the change the circumstance.
Yeah. And I think in real time, you can see bits of information breaking through. When you said, why are they crossing in a place where Border Patrol is waiting? That other side, framework narrative doesn't have an answer for that, because the whole narrative is they're coming illegally. And then you say, well, they're doing a really bad job if they're crossing right into the arms of Border Patrol. Why would they do that? Well, the real answer is because that's what they want to do. They want to present themselves to Border Patrol and apply for asylum. And so it breaks this whole, why don't they do it the legal way? I had some guy just shouting in my face, don't break the law, don't break the law. When I'd try to explain, like, they're applying for asylum. It's not the law, it's not the Constitution. It's like, why are they doing it this way then? Explain it to me. And sometimes little bits of information do get through.
Counterintuitive to people, right? They're thinking like, well, why don't they cross at the border crossing? When you walk up to border crossings, you're often screened out by a passport. So Mike, or driver's license. If Mike had a passport, he can come in. If you don't, they turn you back around. Asylum seekers don't have a passport. They have their documents from their own country that they've, by the way, had to keep very precious through these long, treacherous travels.
Yeah.
But when they get to the border, they're turned around. We're not processing any refugees status claims, right? So they're turned around. And then when they cross the river, there's no one stopping them until they get on U.S. soil, and you have to be on U.S. soil to make a claim for asylum.
Yeah.
That's why they're pre-screening people before they cross the bridge and get to the checkpoint. Now, they're not supposed to do that, but they're doing it.
Actually a violation of international law.
And as one man told me when I said that's a violation of international law, he said, in the United States, we don't recognize international law, which is true. So there's a problem, right? That's in.
We don't play by the rules that the rest of the world plays by.
Yeah. So look, if these were just little one-offs and we were like, hey, we happen to run into a few people up at the trucker convoy, or we happen to run into a couple of people at this border protest, we wouldn't be sharing this as if it's somehow helpful. But it's not just these people. When you engage, and I'm not suggesting everyone engage with strangers like this. It's not safe for everyone to do it. It's not everyone's calling to do it. There's certain people who can do it. And we're comfortable doing this kind of work, talking to Proud Boys in bars, or talking to people on streets, or being yelled at by people before we actually have a chance to engage. That's fine. That's good for our work. We're glad to do it. But just know, people who you might even think or see on the news or saying something, they probably believe what they believe for reasons that make sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can provide some alternatives for some people in some places, some of the time, something can happen. So I want to encourage you all to stay the course on this stuff. And we're going to keep going back to the border. If you're thinking, man, I would love to have been there. We're going to go back to Eagle Pass, actually, this spring in April. We're going to go to the border of Mexico and Arizona in March 12th through the 15th. So if you're interested in that, get on our email list at Vote Common Good, or pay attention to the Vote Common Good website in the next 48 hours. Details about that and how you can sign up to be part of those. One of the visits to Eagle Pass is going to correspond with the watching of the eclipse, which comes through this very part. Eagle Pass, Texas is the center of the eclipse path on April 8th. In fact, I looked today and all the hotels in this little town are sold out. It's going to be a hopping town with lots of people in town watching the eclipse.
Yeah, the first place in the U.S. where you can see the eclipse. And normally they would have an event like this in their park, in Shelby Park, but it's occupied by the Texas National Guard now.
Because Greg Abbott chose to close it down. Took their public park away from them. Yeah. So anyway, if you want to come, we're providing you opportunities to do that, to have a good experience down at the border, and we'd love to have you join us. So keep up on all that. All right, Dan. Well, that was a long bit, but I'm glad we got to get it out, and there's going to be plenty more information coming to y'all from what happened down there, because we want to be able to backfill. And I also want to say, look, we also learned a lot. I learned a lot of the questions that matter to people. I learned that people really do care about if kids are being sex trafficked, so they think we need to stop immigration because they're trafficking children. The problem with that logic is what you're then saying is keep those kids in the hands of child sex traffickers in Mexico. So you're not stopping child sex trafficking. You're just keeping them from coming to the United States where maybe they could even get some help. So we need to think more clearly about what we're doing. If we think that the only reason they're being sex trafficked is because of migration and immigration, they're being sex trafficked because people are sex trafficking kids. And if we just leave them on the Mexico side, we haven't solved any part of that problem at all. So if you care about kids, don't think that that is the solution to caring about children. So.
Yeah, thanks for everyone in the chat for hanging with us, and we'll be back next week with more common goodness.
Yeah, maybe even tomorrow with Paul Wallace.
Okay, yeah.
Paul Wallace. We got to figure out. We had to rearrange things from last week when we went down to Eagle Pass. So. All right, y'all. We'll talk to you. We'll talk to you soon.